Welcome to the Latched On Podcast. The Latched On Podcast is about the outdoors in Appalachia. Everything from hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, bushcraft, and woodsmanship, and digging into the depths of what makes this area of Appalachia so unique as a whole. It's time to strap in for the Latched On Podcast. Alright guys, we got a special podcast episode. I'm actually up in the hunting shack right now. It's a late muzzleloader season up here in Virginia. We only got like 6 or 7 more days left in the season. And I'm up here just seeing if I can get a last minute freezer filler. Just filling up, topping off the freezer and all that stuff. I ain't had a good season so far. It's been a real busy season. A real hectic season. A lot of family stuff has had to take priority, and honestly I've had to put hunting on the back burner a lot this season. That'll be in another episode though. But this is another deer story episode, and since I'm up here in the shack up on my property, it seems only fitting that I tell one of the deer stories that I got up here. It was 2019 November 9th. Me and Skyler were up here in the deer shack. We came up here a couple days before and hunted, and saw a good amount of does, or a good amount of bucks, I'm sorry. And we felt, let's come up here again on a Friday. It was November 9th, and we got up here before sunrise, set up in the shack. We only had one muzzleloader between both of us, so it was kind of like whoever saw the first target, shooter buck, gets the first shot. So it's about 8 o'clock, and I'm sitting looking in front of us, and Skyler's sitting beside me. Skyler's kind of shutting his eyes for a minute, put it in a dip, and I look off to my right, and I see a buck come out of the tree line right here beside the shack, and I was like, Skyler, we got a deer. And Skyler said, no, I ain't believing you. Because I was playing a little joke on him earlier, and I said, hey, there's a big old buck right here, and it wasn't nothing. But this time it was a nice 8-pointer, probably about 2.5 to 3.5 years old. He was young for the time. But this is the first time in probably about 3 years I had a chance to go deer hunting consistently, because work schedules just kept me busy, so I just made time for it this year. And so this 8-pointer comes out of the shack, maybe 25 to 35 yards from the shack. I get the muzzleloader, put the primer in, cock back the hammer. So I'm telling you, there's a deer right here. You might want to move or cover your ears. And Skyler's like sitting right there. He's on the floor, but he's sitting right there. So my gun, my muzzleloader, goes past him, barrels out the window, and I look at him and I say, Skyler, you cover your ears right now, it's going to go off. And he still does not believe me. And I pull the trigger, and big old poof of smoke comes around. And Skyler's like, there really was a deer right there, wasn't it? I'm like, yeah, I just shot at it. So I lost sight of the deer because it ran, because the big old poof of smoke, I couldn't see where it ran off to, but I know it didn't run far. It was a good shot. I aimed for front shoulder, heart, vital V area. So we waited about 25 minutes, and I walked down to where I thought he ran to, where the fields and all that stuff, where the grass and all that stuff has kind of been bent over a little bit. Looks like he ran through there. And sure enough, about 40 yards later, he's dead, sitting there and all that stuff. Perfect kill, didn't suffer none. Went right through the shoulder, and hit his heart, the top ventricles of his heart, or whatever it is. So I told Skyler after that, I said, well, I'm gonna gut him, and you reload the muzzleloader and keep an eye out for anything else that comes around. So we're down here. He's back up in the shack. I'm behind the shack, and I'm gutting the deer out and saving his heart. Luckily, the heart was saved and all that, and had him gutted out. Luckily, it was a cold day too. It was about in the 30s, so I was able to hang the deer behind the shack, and the wind was going in a direction of where anything in front of us wasn't going to smell a dead deer anyway. So then, hours go by, and Skyler, I think, is getting a little disheartened, and he's like, I don't think I'm going to get a chance at a deer up here today. And I said, no, just hold on. Give it some time. It's November 9th. It's the rut. The rut's kicked in up here. They're chasing. They're scooting around. We've seen plenty of does. There's no reason to think that a buck still ain't going to come around. And sure enough, I'd say about 12:15ish, a buck starts coming out at the bottom of the field where I like to call it the saddle, where two hollers meet at a little hill where the road comes in. And I calculate it, and it's about 136 yards. And I said, if you think you can make that shot, go for it, Bubby. And he aims with the muzzleloader. There's tall grass in the way of where we want to hit the deer at, and I'm kind of like acting as a spotter with him. I'm looking through the binoculars, and he's looking through the muzzleloader, and I said, just wait until he gets clear from them tall grass and all that stuff. You may have a good clear shot at him. So the deer's just like standing there behind that grass. It's like he knows that we're not going to take a shot unless we're clear. So we waited about maybe what felt like 30 minutes, but I know it wasn't 30 minutes. It was maybe like 5 or 7 minutes at most. And then he starts kind of cruising a little bit, but he's still covered up by that grass. And I just said, buddy, if you think you can make the shot, shoot him. I said, send it. That's a quote, too. I mean, I wish we filmed that day, but we didn't. We were just concentrating on getting a deer. And I just said, screw it, send it. And he just, boom, big old poof of smoke. Deer runs kind of more forward, kind of up in the field, a little bit away from the saddle, and just stands there. And I'm like, did you even hit him? And he's like, I don't know if I hit him or not. And he stands there in the field maybe 10 minutes after we shoot him, like acting like nothing's wrong. He's just kind of standing there looking. I guess he just had so much adrenaline going that he just didn't think nothing of it. So I open the door of the shack, and I go, man. He just kind of looks, doesn't move. And Alan, Skyler, just looks at him straight up and just says, fall down. Just yells out from the shack, fall down. And he kind of trots off into the wood line. And I said, all right, hold off for about 30 minutes and we'll see what we can find. We ride the four-wheeler down there to where we last saw him. And we see him. We find him. He's laying down. It was a perfect lung shot. We were just impatient at the time. But it was a perfect lung shot. He passed not long after we got there. We didn't have to do a mercy kill or none of that stuff. He was just running out. He just like his last breaths left him as we got there. And we got that deer. Luckily it was dry enough and not muddy enough of where I got the truck up here on the dirt roads without getting caught up in the muck and all that stuff because it wasn't wet, luckily. And I was able to drive them right up to the shack and loaded both deer into the truck. And we both got 2 8-pointers. Both of them probably about 3.5 years old at most. Fairly young deer, but it was our first deer. It was his first big deer that he's ever got, and it was my first deer that I've had in 3 years, so I wasn't being too picky at the time. I was just happy to get some meat in the freezer. And I think the rest of the weekend, me and him both just butchered it ourselves. We butchered my deer Saturday, and we butchered his deer Sunday. Because it was cold all weekend, we were able to let him hang up and everything. It was pretty nice the way the meat aged and all that stuff. You couldn't have asked for a more perfect weekend to kill a deer and to process it yourself and all that stuff. We got plenty of steaks, roasts, and ground out of it. Knowing a little bit more of what I know now about butchering, I wish we kind of did it a little bit different. I could have got some more meat out of it, but overall, we got a lot of meat out of both of them deer, and it taught me a lot about butchering my own deer. And I think a couple weeks after that, I think my wife's 2 uncles, they shot deer, and they didn't. One of my wife's uncles bother keeping it except for the back straps. And the other one had to go for a job and didn't have a chance to go to the processor. So I processed both them deer. So we were filled to the brim with deer meat that year. And the best part about it is I only shot that one 8-pointer, but I had 3 deer in the freezer. Fed the family for, I think we just finished off the last bit of those deer, maybe 6-7 months ago during the summer. So, I mean, that was definitely a deer hunt that I remember, and it makes hunting up here in the shack special to me. That's half the reason why I hunt up here as a tradition on opening muzzleloader, opening rifle a lot of times, because it's something that one of my wife's uncles built the shack up here. He hunted out of it and he stopped hunting. And then I started hunting a little bit more and more up here. I try to hunt public land a lot, but I do like to come up here every now and then and hunt. It's nice to be in the shack. It's nice to have 4 walls and a roof. If it's rainy or super windy or super cold, I can sit up here. I don't have to worry about the wind. I don't have to worry about the rain. Especially it's a good place to be during rifle season when you don't have to worry about competition from other hunters in the woods and, walking up on top of you, or you walking up on top of them and you feeling like a jerk for doing it. So that's a good deer story. I wanted to share with you all. If you've watched the channel before, you know that I come up here to the shack a lot, and honestly, my first deer that I ever got, I got up here at the shack. It was about 3 years before that, and it was a nice little 6-pointer I got with my first, before I actually bought a deer hunting rifle. I shot it with a Mosin Nagant, old Army surplus Mosin Nagant that I got. Put a wide angle scope on it and shot it about the same place of where Skyler shot his deer with the muzzleloader. So that's what kind of makes this place a special place for me. And you see me hunting up here, you see that the deer are just everywhere up here. There's does everywhere this upcoming year. We had a couple of good bucks show up on camera. Unfortunately, I think they have been harvested by other people from other ridges and other mountains surrounding my property. But there's always next year, and Dickinson County is opening up the last week of deer season, January 1st through the 6th, for antlerless or antlered deer on private property. So I'm probably at least going to harvest a doe or 2 up here in the next week. So that'll be helpful for feeding the family and all that stuff. But thought I'd share that story with you all. Been a little scarcity in podcast episodes the last couple of months. We've been so busy with deer hunting, so busy with personal lives, that we honestly haven't had a chance, me and Zach haven't had a chance to meet up a lot and do a lot of podcasts. The last one we did was deer camp. So hope y'all enjoyed this short story, this short episode, and stay tuned for 2024. We got a lot of awesome content coming out, podcast wise and video wise and all that stuff. And we got a next episode, first episode of the new season of the podcast or whatever it is. We're going to do a lot of forecasting and showing what to expect on the channel, and hopefully you all will love what y'all see. But that's my deer story. At least that's my most memorable deer story. And I'm sure I got plenty of more deer stories, but I'll save those for other episodes at other times. We just figured me and Zach knock out our 2 most memorable deer stories, his most memorable and my most memorable. That way, it gives you all something to listen to, and inspires you hopefully to go deer hunting and get something yourself. And if you all have a deer story, feel free to message us on our Instagram, thoughtfully and detailedly. And we'll either read it out loud on the podcast, or we might get up with you one day and have you just record it for yourself. We always like to hear those deer stories, and especially next year, we'll probably fill most of next deer season with nothing but deer stories, because we'll be too busy deer hunting, and it gives us a lot of content to fill in the deer season so that people can kind of figure out what's going on and maybe pick up some tips and tricks from other people who have been deer hunting. So hope y'all enjoyed this episode of the Latched On Podcast, and we'll catch y'all next year.